Well, the tagline on the front of the door comes from my customers. So they're the ones that kept telling me, I was a weirdo and a freak, but this was the only place I felt safe. And I heard this dozens of times. And the 5 things that I've heard forever was, I bought my first bong from you. I bought my first motorcycle jacket from you. I bought my first Dr. Martin from you. I came to your store and I had always been uncomfortable with my family and my community, and it was the first place I felt safe. And the last thing I heard was when I turned 16 and I got my driver's license, I stole the keys to my parents' car, and the first place I drove to was the alley. That's what I've been hearing, and that's where a safe place for weirdos, freaks, and misfits comes from. Hey everybody, I'm Mark. Some people call me the boss. This is the alley. It's a safe place for weirdos, freaks, and misfits, and that's the way it's been for 47 years. Come on in and I'll show you around. This is the way the alley has kind of looked on and off for 45 years. No need to change what works. The merchandise changes, the people change, a little bit of the decor changes, but the alley is a legacy and we try to maintain that. Let's be honest, who that customer was 50 years ago, 45 years ago when we first started, kind of looks like me today. Maybe he's got a beard, maybe he's got some grungy hair, maybe he's got a leather jacket on. And he has had adult children who have had grandchildren. And we get 3 generations coming into the store, and it's an amazing thing. The alley is the only one in 5 states where you can walk in really and see a selection of demonias or buy all the goofy jackets. Listen, a lot of people sell motorcycle jackets. You look at a lot of the styles of jackets that I've got, there's not another shop in Chicago that's selling the Bones jacket. I'm not the only one that makes it. We might have been on the edge 25, 30 years ago and people looked down our nose. Today, we're kind of accepted by middle America. The culture of the alley has always been a mishmash. It's been different folks who learn to accept each other. We've hired over 30 felons in 47 years, people who got arrested, either served their time or did their probation, and I think people were entitled to a second chance, and I think people were entitled to a redemption. Nobody has ever worked for me, ever told me that any of the people that were guilty of a felon have ever bothered them, and all of these people have gone on to good, healthy lives. It's just about flat-out acceptance. Do you know that 30% of the people in this building have been with me between 5 and 22 years? And once again, it's the culture. It's every time I see a tenant, I stop and I say hi and we talk, and it's just being kind to people. And that's what's wrong with this world. People aren't kind to each other. I grew up in a pretty well-to-do family until my parents got a divorce when I was 9 or 10 years old. We went from, having everything to suddenly there wasn't enough food in our house. And my mother had really taken an emotional beating because of this divorce. And at 13 years old, I had to start managing the family finances. And I knew we were running out of food on the 20th of the month. And so I would take my mother on the 20th of the month when there was still a little bit of money left. And, we'd buy 6 dozen eggs, and we'd buy white bread and put it in the freezer, and we'd buy bone-in hams and cheap food, baked potatoes and things, so there was enough food to last through the month. And I began to realize that there was really an inequality between people. My dad's gone 20 years. We've made peace. My mother's gone 25 years. I've made my peace. I'm not mad at anybody. I've had a wonderful life. I've had a great marriage. I've had a wonderful career. But I began to recognize what income inequality did. from what happened to me as a child and through the divorce and having to find my ways and feed myself and feed my staff, this is how we created this culture that has become the alley. And we just don't say no to anybody. These are made right here, 25 feet away. And when I was 17 years old and got thrown out of a private school on the way to Harvard, I took the savings bonds meant for Harvard, and I bought that jewelry factory. And that's how I came to own the alley. The alley was started about 2 years before I got there. My original partner's name was Don Lynn. I was a 20-year-old guy. He was a 62-year-old guy. He had opened up 13 alleys and stole the whole management from Spencer Gifts in this territory to open up these stores. And he lost about $1 million like overnight, which was big money in the 70s. And the only store he had that seemed to be doing well was the Woodfield Mall store. And so we ended up selling Woodfield a lot of merchandise, and we were kind of dropping and picking up checks and dropping and picking up checks, and then suddenly Don Lynn wasn't around and we weren't getting checks. And so it was like over a period of, 6-7 weeks, he ended up owing me about $20,000, which was huge money. And I couldn't pay my staff, and it was an economic hardship. And I barged into his office, and he was sitting there with 4 or 5 suits. And I said, and he goes, I'm in a meeting. I said, I don't care if you're in a fucking meeting. I need my money. Well, go sit down outside. As soon as I finish the meeting, I will be glad to talk to you. And I looked at the other guys who were sitting in the room. I said, all of you get out of here. Somebody call 911, get the police and an ambulance. And they went running out of the room. And he looked at me and he goes, well, that's pretty rude. I says, well, playing games with my money so that I can't feed my staff, that's like unconscionable. I want my money. Well, why don't you sit down? You need to understand. And so I took my arm and I took everything on his desk and I threw it on the floor. And I says, I'm going to turn the desk over on you if you don't get me a check. And he said, I think you and I should become partners. He says, you got guts, kid. So I looked at him and we started talking. And so then we had a little store across from our factory called Moonchild. There's pictures on the wall. I'll show it to you in a minute. And I said, tell you what, I got about $25,000 to $30,000 at retail in my store. I'll be glad to put that up and another $10,000 worth of merchandise that I make, and we can go partners. So we signed a partnership agreement. I put that in, and I ran that store. And in the first 3 years, you gotta understand, I'm a 21-year-old kid, 22-year-old kid by now, I don't know. We split $1 million in the first 3 years. Place was a home run. We've talked about culture in the alley. Well, the art colony has a different culture. Frank, who's been with us, how many years now, Frank?
12.
12 years. Is literally one of our best fine artists, and you'll see his paintings here in a second as we journey through the building. So anyway, I get to see Frank every morning. I'll just call over the door, hey Frank, good morning, how are you? And we've been together for 12 years. So let's go take a little walk through the building. So my dad was trying to get me out of the bong business. And so he opened up a home health care center. For about 2.5 years, I got up at 5 in the morning, drove to Indiana at 6, worked from 6 to noon with my dad, drove back to the factory at noon, and we were making roach clips and bongs and buffalo nickel clips and everything else. And I'd work till 5 or 6 at night, go home, pass out, get up and do it again. And about a year in, it was getting tired. I went another year, and then I looked at my dad one day. I said, I can't do this anymore. And he said, well, what are you going to do for a living? And when I told him how much I'm making, he almost fell off his chair. He goes, I can't believe that. And I go, well, it's work.
It's over now.
And then the government changed all the laws, and you couldn't sell bongs. And of course, today, here we are, and we have legalized cannabis. So that was when we started to do the switch over, and I met Kenny Brown, and we brought in punk t-shirts. But I closed Woodfield Mall. We couldn't even afford to stay open without bongs. We couldn't make it with t-shirts. We couldn't do enough volume. We had a store at Broadway and Surf. Eventually, we moved it over to Belmont and Clark, and all the rest is history. Biker chains, spiked collars, that's been part of our culture for 40-some years. All of this stuff is made in the USA. Alley logo shirts. This is the heart of the legacy. So we started off making about 6 or 8 shirt styles 40-some years ago. Today we make 150 shirt styles. We print them 25 feet away in our own print shop. I design with graphic artists these shirts. All the touring bands, as they came through Chicago, they all ended up in the store. Bono used to come in regularly, Plant and Page came in regularly, Ministry came in regularly. So all these guys came in. One day, Rob Zombie, who was a really, really regular guy, he really shopped in the alley a lot, came in, bought this jacket from us, which was doing so at the time. And back when MTV was MTV, which it's not anymore, he wore this in a music video. And we sold a couple $1 million worth of this jacket over the next 2 to 3 years. Oh, listen, as the years went on, my dad would come and visit the stores, and, he didn't understand it, but, I was making a nice living. I married Adrian. We had kids. We bought a house. And, it was like, as my daughter might say or tell you, it was like we were living in a house with a little white picket fence, but there were little skulls on every picket on the fence. So we were living in a very normal neighborhood, but, I pulled up in front of the house every night in a hearse. We make our own screens, we print our own shirts, we make our own molds, we make our own jewelry, and, I like Made in the USA. It's kind of cool. We made in our day thousands of pieces a day when Mobtown existed, and we were selling people all over America. There were 900 stores like the Alley all over America until Hot Topic came in, oversaturated the market, kind of destroyed the marketplace, and today there's maybe 50 or 100 stores like us left, maybe 25. My worst nightmare would be if my last breath was that I still owned the Alley and I hadn't found somebody to take it over. Frankly, my health is suffering, and, what I need to do is find the person who's going to carry on the legacy and the culture of what we're doing. And we do need to take the brand to the next level. It's going to be a tough business for you to find somebody who understands your culture and who has money. Then I got to work with them to teach them how we do business and how we do sourcing. And, part of this is I've been always inclusive of my staff. If we see something and we think it's cool, I'll show it to the staff. What do you think of it? We've always included the staff in making many of our decisions. So we've got to find somebody that can make the next generation, as well as the last 2 or 3 generations, feel comfortable. But I'm a 69-year-old guy who's had 15 surgeries, and now they've diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, which explains all the pain I live in every day, which doesn't stop me from being a pretty happy-go-lucky guy.
And I do the best I can to live through all this, but I've got to find somebody who's going to take this on and move it on. I thank people all the time. Thanks for coming in the store. And people say, no, thank you for coming in the store. Or thank you for having the store, rather. And so I don't want to let people down, and I don't want to let myself down. You know, the continued success of the store is really what keeps me alive. You know, dealing with pain is cognitive. And I walk into that store every day and I get love. I mean, I get people who thank me for being there. And that is part of what helps me work through my pain. I'm not letting anybody else cut me again. There are no more surgeries. I am done with any major medical stuff. You know, whatever my body does, then it's going to do. And, you know, whatever illness becomes me. So now what I want to do is I want to live the rest of my days enjoying what I do, be at peace with myself, enjoy my store, enjoy my customers. And, you know, that's kind of what I want to do. And I want to find somebody to carry this on.